You're watching the Intel Network Builders vSummit series. I'm Guy Daniels, Director of Content at TelecomTV. As 5G continues to gain momentum with new deployments and new service delivery around the world, the core has become a vital element for operators to upgrade in order to reach the full promise of the specifications. But how do you transform this element of the infrastructure for consumers, enterprises, and operators to reap the full benefits that 5G was designed to provide? Well, joining me now to discuss how BT and Intel have worked together to integrate the 5G core into the network, the deployment timeline, and what capabilities are being offered as new services to the industry are Neil McRae, Chief Architect, MD Architecture and Technology Strategy with BT Group, and Alex Quach, Vice President and General Manager, Wireline and Core Network Division at Intel. Well, it's great to see both of you again. Thanks so much for taking part in our discussion on the 5G network core. Alex, let me start by asking you why the 5G core is so instrumental for the industry to realize the full promise of 5G.
Sure. Very, very simply put, to realize the full promise of 5G and the services, the new exciting services that 5G will offer, we fundamentally, the industry and all the service providers will need to move to a different network architecture, moving away from the way a 4G core or even a 3G core has been architected, in a monolithic fashion. The 5G core has a services-based architecture, is containerized, is cloud native, and will offer the flexibility, the agility, and the automation that's needed to provide the services that you will see across consumers and enterprise in the 5G environment.
Thanks, Alex. And Neil, can you give us an update on the status of BT's 5G network and its deployment to date?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of rollout, we're in over 150 markets across the UK. And when we build 5G, we don't just put one base station and say, hey, that city's got 5G. We have a certain level that we want to ensure that there's a percentage of coverage in the areas that we're building in. And because we feel that it's not just about having 5G in one place, we're trying to enable 5G everywhere. So, the radio builds out, that's a heavy lift, challenging infrastructure project, really. On the 5G core, so we all launched, everyone in networks launched on what we call non-standalone, and we're all moving to 5G standalone right now. And our what we call our mobile cloud core runs on BT Network Cloud, and it's a cloud native platform that we're partnering with Intel on and Ericsson to stand up a truly cloud native, microservices based, Kubernetes based 5G core network, running it in the cloud ways of running it, where you can chop and change things really easily. And we actually start to migrate customers to that early in 2022. As we come to the end of 2021 here, it's up and running. It's running with trial traffic right now, and we're about to go into production with it. And we're really excited about it because it really starts to some extent the true journey of 5G, which is all about the advanced services we can offer.
And what are the key considerations, Neil, that when choosing how to implement BT's 5 network and specifically the 5G core?
Yeah, we were looking. We look at it kind of through 3 or 4 different lenses, Guy. Obviously, we want to be innovative. That's BT and EE, our mobile brand, is all about network leadership. We're the leader in the UK by miles ahead of the competition, and that's kind of the first lens that we look through this. So how can we build a platform that allows us to not only just offer an outstanding service on 5G with your smartphone, but also allow us to innovate and create new capabilities for, in the majority, enterprises, but also some fun new gaming type solutions for consumers, where we're able to use 5G capabilities to improve the experience. We're also looking at it through ease of operation, and probably that's been one of the most challenging areas. We've had to migrate our engineers from as Alex was saying, a 4G monolithic world to a 5G cloud Kubernetes microservices world, letting them know the underlying infrastructure of Intel's CPU and x86 so that we're able to maximize it, figuring out how you think of the network from a cloud point of view, and really had to do a massive amount of learning in that space. So, so that we can not just have the capabilities, but run them in a very high level of availability, and which is one of the key components of 5G. So those sort of lenses is how we're looking at it, but ultimately the final lens is through the lens of the customer, and what does this mean for our customers? How will it benefit them? How will they become more dependent on the network? My job is to make people more dependent upon the network, and to use the network to make their lives more rich and easier. And that's the kind of lens that probably the most important lens that we look through when we've been building this platform.
Thanks, Neil. And Alex, Neil mentioned there a number of considerations that go into the planning process and the deployment process. So how is Intel trying to ease the transition from 4G to the 5G core, both for BT and also for other network providers?
Sure. In terms of what Intel does is we bring out platforms and technologies that we strive to provide the absolute best return on investment for service providers like BT and others. And so generation on generation, we introduce platforms that have better performance across the network, particularly in the core. But then really what's really key is the software ecosystem readiness on these platforms, so that the companies like BT and what Neil is looking to achieve is they can actually deploy the latest and greatest hardware in the 5G and in the 5G core infrastructure, and have the choice of software vendors that they can work with, whether in this case this is Ericsson or anybody else. So we continue to bring out very highly performant server-based platforms that can run these 5G core workloads, and we work with the broad ecosystem to ensure that the ecosystem is ready not 2 years after the launch and availability of this hardware, but really timed as closely as possible to the availability of these systems in market. And then above and beyond that, we also have what we call experience kits, which are customer collateral for deploying based on container, microservices, and bare metal deployments. These are sort of the best known methods for how to ensure that you can take advantage of all of the capabilities and features that the infrastructure hardware that we offer can provide. So those are the sort of main ways. We also contribute into the cloud native compute foundation. So open source, components that actually help with the availability of tools that can take advantage of the underlying hardware capabilities in a cloud environment, which is very different than previous environments. And so, we continue to do that across a number of different projects in the CNCF, and that helps move overall, ease the transition in some ways for service providers generally.
Thanks, Alex. Neil, I just want to pick up on what Alex said there, about the involvement with CNCF, and you both spoke about the architectural changes of moving from 4G to 5G. What can you share of your plans to transition away from the monolithic 4G towards a cloud-native 5G network?
Yeah, I mean, as I said earlier, we're well on our way to do that. We've been partnered with Intel on network virtualization since 2012, and there was some aspects of that worked really well. There was some aspects that needed more work, particularly around network management and control. And we suddenly decided to pivot to a much more cloud native approach, where you're able to use the assets of CPU, memory, storage, and connectivity wherever you needed them, which kind of took us to Kubernetes, and that kind of way of packaging solutions up in containers and deploying them, and that's pretty much what we've been very focused on over the last few years. Our BT Network Cloud which is what this is based on, is up and running across our network in the UK. Today it serves CDN traffic. So if you watch Disney Plus and you're a BT customer, it comes from our BT Network Cloud today with our great partner Quilt. And we're starting to build more and more what we call tenants onto that platform. And one of the core tenants is our 5G mobile cloud core, which is what we call it. And that, as I said, that platform's up and running, and we're starting to migrate traffic towards it. We've had to learn a lot about tooling, and actually this is where Intel have been an outstanding partner for us. We jointly built a really fantastic x86 cloud builder training program with our own collateral, with Intel's collateral, with some of Ericsson's collateral. We built this pathway for our engineers to learn about what it means to be running a cloud platform and a cloud native platform. And the partnership with Intel there was just out of this world. And that I think trying to do what we were doing without Intel would have been, really difficult. We're also leveraging Juniper, who are our SDN partner that's effectively enabling the cloud to signal the network to create network connections automatically, so that if the cloud, if the mobile core needs to talk to something somewhere on the network, it can signal our network controller, and the network controller can build the right connectivity with the right capabilities within it, which for 5G capabilities like network slicing is going to become really important in the future as we build slices for very demanding use cases where real time and reliability is ever more important.
So we know the direction in which we want to go, but what is holding the industry back from moving faster in the deployment of 5G and affiliated services? Neil, let me ask that to you first.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of mentioned that. I think one of the challenges of 5G early on was that we decided to do more than just the architecture of the 5G part of 5G, if you like. So the normal cellular piece, we also decided to, we also decided to position it as a platform that needed virtualization. And I think as operators, probably that wasn't as mature as we needed it to be. Our own skills in that area probably not mature as we needed them to be. And we've had to learn a lot and effectively become, have the same sort of skills that the hyperscalers have, and being able to build out and expand our platforms, leveraging, the technology that Intel give us. I think the second thing is, the normal things of building networks, trying to get into locations to build antennas and radio masts, etc., is always very challenging. COVID for us has definitely affected us. We're probably behind where we are because of COVID as well, unfortunately. But also COVID's given us different ways of thinking about things and actually given us probably an early vision of the future where everything needs to be automated, everything needs to be digital. So in some respects, that's been helpful to us because we've kind of pivoted a little bit. But ultimately, you might argue that we're behind. I would argue that we're taking pace very carefully. Through COVID, the world became super dependent upon the network. And over time, for me, that's mission accomplished. That's what gets me out of bed in the morning. But I want to see people become more and more and more dependent on the network so that their lives become, they can fill their lives with things that are of interest and their passions rather than dealing with menial tasks that the network can perhaps help them with. And then, from that perspective, if you're going to rely more upon the network, then the network has to be reliable. It has to be there all the time, and it has to be there where you need it. And those are kind of the key principles that we've approached the migration from 4G to 5G. We want to lead in the UK as we do today, but we actually want to jump even further ahead and give people the power of the network wherever they are.
Thanks, Neil. And Alex, what do you see is holding the industry back from perhaps moving faster in the deployment of 5G and services?
Yeah, I actually concur very much with Neil in terms of, the way part of the movement to 5G is definitely on the network infrastructure side and the network build out side. And I would commend BT in terms of their adoption of Kubernetes containers and ultimately cloud native based solutions as it is today. This movement to cloud native is actually a journey that we see across the industry. It's not something that you just turn on a light switch. And most of the networks, as Neil highlighted, that came on late 2018, early 2019, 2020, was very much in a non-standalone from a core network perspective, where you actually started deploying coverage with base stations using 5G spectrum and 5G capable base stations, but really using a 4G core VPC. And we're seeing service providers, and there isn't a one-size-fit-all, but service providers move towards a standalone, sometimes still, virtual machine-based, but in many instances, container-based and microservices-based in areas like a business-to-business network where there's much more focus on the enterprise and offering services that enterprises will ultimately adopt. And BT in this instance is one of the leaders in getting out these cloud native based networks and having them deployed vis-a-vis other service providers around the world. That said, if we take away the focus from network for a second, in towards the adoption of enterprise services, I think one of the ways that that would help accelerate the adoption of 5G is particularly in the services environment to find and to get to the right services in specific enterprise verticals, may that be in industrial, factory automation, et cetera, where I think the adoption of services will then help fuel the continual build out of the network. And that's a very, very different perspective than than getting the capabilities that Neil was articulating, because BT it's obviously has had to go through that level of transition and really have come out on the other side, where they're experts now in the network. So I think that's another aspect.
Thanks, Alex. Neil, did you want to add some comments to what Alex was saying there?
Yeah, I mean, the question kind of takes me back to maybe 3 or 4 years ago, where someone asked me, Neil, what will make 5G successful? And my answer was collaboration. And that's one of the hardest things. How do we work with our customers to bring the power of the network to the activities that they're doing? And we as telecommunications operators, working with fantastic technology partners like Intel, have to figure out how we collaborate in bigger groups with customers to really bring out all the great compute capability that Intel brings, plus the connectivity capabilities that we bring, to really make a difference in the enterprise. How do we bring on a platform like camera as a service with massive megapixel cameras that can allow an engine manufacturer to effectively move to a platform-based business model, engine as a service, as they manufacture an engine, they've got such high-resolution video of all the components coming together. They've got a really good understanding of the lifetime, the mechanical issues of that engine, so that they can, rather than sell an engine, they sell a service. And that's the sort of use case that we're working with Intel on and other partners, but really working with our enterprise customers as partners, rather than as it's been historically as kind of procurement discussions. It's more about partnership. And for me, if we want to really see the value of 5G and any other network generation after it, collaboration is going to be crucial for us. And with the great collaboration we've had with Intel, I'm really optimistic about how big a difference we can make to our customers' businesses and our customers' worlds.
Thanks, Neil, which leads us very nicely to our next question, because Alex, you mentioned quite rightly, this is a journey. So what are some of the key challenges ahead on this journey as the industry continues to deploy 5G and looks towards rolling out new services?
There's so many challenges across, so many different fronts. We look at this and, we feel super fortunate to be partnering, with thought leading companies, like BT and with Neil's organization around, overcoming some of these challenges. But as we move towards cloud native, there are some specific areas that are just, they're foundational, and then of course, capabilities that the service providers are solving as well. But foundational capabilities as it relates to the infrastructure, we'll start with performance. So in the 4G space, when we move towards virtualized solutions, performance was and remains in 5G a very, very foundational capability. And, both from a user plane perspective, which was a main focus for us in terms of optimization. Now, as we move towards a microservices-based, architecture and solution, making sure that we have performance not just in the user plane, but also in the control plane where microservices are deployed, and overcoming challenges that we may have in terms of getting the absolute best performance in control plane is a major focus area for us. So performance is one. Security is another one. In 4G, the security threats were very different, and the solutions that were deployed were very different. So perimeter-based security was, probably sufficient in 4G environments. As you move towards a 5G microservices-based architecture with a common bus across all the network elements, that's a completely different, threat landscape. And so Intel is also, working with BT in this front to figure out how we can actually, provide the most secure network, 5G core network out there, and actually beyond the core. But starting in the core, how do we provide the best level of security out there? And then, as service providers continue to move towards virtualized and cloud-based environments, they're increasingly adopting more and more servers in their data centers, and servers moving out towards the edge as well for deploying, edge computing and edge cloud-based environments. And in that instance, it's really about how do we manage power so that we can minimize the power consumption both in the core data centers as well as at the edge. And that's a major concern for many service providers around the world. And we're looking to provide cluster-based, server-based, and also workload-based power management capabilities on our platforms to actually reduce that footprint. And then last but not least, in terms of the cloud native deployments, network observability is very, very important now to be able to, as Neil points out, right, better orchestrate and manage the network. And we're also delivering observability capabilities, for the underlying hardware platforms, telemetry for the underlying hardware platforms that are open, and hopefully, will provide the necessary capabilities and insights that service providers like BT needs to actually have the most effective and efficient networks deployed.
Thanks, Alex. A lot of challenges there. Neil, do you see the same key challenges to 5G and services as Alex has mentioned?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I 100% echo everything Alex has said. I think, there's one thing building a cloud platform, there's another thing running it, growing it, feeding it, expanding it, and developing it. And I think, we're going to rely upon Intel and our other partners to help us through that journey as we bring more and more services on board. And then, I think the other challenge is, I really want everywhere, every corner of the UK to have 5G connectivity and to be able to leverage it. And that's a massive challenge for us. How do we bring 5G everywhere? Our Leapfrog program inside BT, where we're rolling out brand new 5G capable networks with higher bandwidth and higher throughput across all of the UK is one part of it, but we've got much more that we need to do. Again, probably working with partners to help solve some of those challenges. But really, the challenge for us is to prove that we can be trusted with our customers and users' network needs 100% of the time, in 100% of the locations where they are. And that really is a long journey that we've got to go on between now and the end of the decade. But it's probably one of the most exciting times to be in telecommunications, because we're really making a difference to the world that probably few of us ever imagined.
Yeah, absolutely, Neil. Well said. And finally, you both mentioned some key issues there, security, coverage, power, etc. So looking forward, Neil, how do you believe we can overcome these industry-wide challenges?
Yeah, I mean, partly by kind of acknowledging them and kind of, trying and experimenting with different things. How do we turn, at 3 o'clock in the morning, the network's the quietest it can be. How do we turn down the radios in a way that, when there's no one there, we could use less power? I think energy consumption, here in the UK, energy prices have gone up almost a third in the last few months. And that affects everybody. And the easiest way to reduce that cost is to reduce the usage, which has a whole lot of other benefits in terms of sustainability. So I think I think energy is, over the next few years, is going to be really one of the big ones. And I think the only way we can solve that is by working as an industry much more together. Again, with some of our technology partners like Intel, and ensuring we understand the capabilities in the next generation Xeon processor, where Intel give us some phenomenal capabilities. Actually, quite often we don't even know they're there, or we don't use them. And we need to challenge ourselves to be the experts in every detail of that, so that we can extract the most from it. How do we think about the distribution of traffic and CDN, where I think CDN can help us reduce energy as well as we bring content closer to customers? And then how do we take some of the network technology to other use cases? How do we use our ability in the network to build paths through the network? How might we take that to a haulier who's got thousands of lorries across the country? How might we use that technology to help him build more optimal routes and connect that to the network, and use AI and machine learning to make their whole process even better? So, but as I said in my previous answer, 5G and this era is the era of collaboration. Collaborate or die. That's my belief.
Thank you, Neil. And Alex, final comments from you. How do we overcome these industry-wide challenges?
Boy, I couldn't agree more with what Neil said in terms of collaboration and experimentation. I think many companies, bring different ideas. Intel certainly has a lot of capabilities and experience in this space. But we can't bring these new technologies to fruition unless, thought-leading companies, like BT, we can partner with to actually realize some of these experiments. And then we can pull in the ecosystem supply base, the software vendors, the cloud platform vendors, to look at, really solving some of these challenges. Neil talked about power consumption as one area. Other areas include security and performance, as I talked about. And just getting into experimentation of how these solutions actually work, and doing the proof of concepts, and then learning from that, and then being able to harden the solution and then scale is really where the industry is going to come in. And again, Panil's comments around collaboration, this is so fundamental. Coming in with an open mind, wanting to solve problems, and then being able to collaborate, I think is just a fundamental tenet. Focused on these, specific, content areas that Neil and I talked about.
Absolutely. Well, Alex and Neil, thank you both very much for sharing your insights on delivering the promise of 5G. And don't forget to watch our other programs in this Intel Network Builders vSummit series. We have a partner panel discussion on how to ease the deployment of the cloud-native 5G core, and another on how to integrate microservices with the 5G network core. And as well as Network Core, the series also takes a detailed look at vRAN, Edge, and security. For now, though, thanks for watching and goodbye.